Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on harnessing AI to drive audit strategy and measurable impact. A special welcome to those of you that are joining us for the second day in a row. I hope you'll find today's webinar as fruitful as the one you attended yesterday. I'd also like to take this moment to acknowledge the Women for Change that is leading the fight against gender-based violence and femicide in our country, and the many women that will be protesting for this cause today. As an organization, we are supporting this cause and we are saying we need to break the silence, take a stand, and be the change. My name is Akona Pogomela. I'm an associate director within our Business Risk Services division at SNG Grant Thornton, and I'm delighted to host this exciting session. As we all know, AI is rapidly transforming how organizations operate, and it also introduces opportunities as well as new risks. Because of this, as internal auditors, we are expected by management as well as the internal auditors, audit committee, to ensure that we are on top of our game. So we are also at a defining moment. According to Gartner, 37 of organizations have deployed Gen AI, and most audit teams are still exploring, and with even fewer that have taken meaningful action. Globally, only 15 audit teams are actually using AI today. So the gap between AI adoption as well as AI assurance is widening very fast. And that's why today's discussion matters. So we've designed our webinar to be practical, relevant, as well as forward-looking. And our agenda will focus on two areas that every internal auditor needs to understand. The first area is on how we audit AI. This will be led by our first speaker, Riaz Mohammed, who is one of the directors in our business risk division. And Riaz will look at what effective AI governance as well as control should include, and as well as the risks that we need to look after. Hello, Riaz. The second area will be led by Hema Chetty, who is the co-founder as well as the chief and operations officer of Imagination Technology. Hi, Hema. And Hema will then be taking us through the life cycle of an internal audit function using AI. And she'll be looking at risk assessment, planning, scoping, as well as fieldwork. And will be giving us some tips on how we can use AI. Hi, Hema. So
Hello.
we will then, hi. We will then hear from our speakers during our panel discussion. They will be joined by Ria Pretorius, who is the head of business risk services, as well as our sponsor for SHEroes. Hi, Ria. We're looking forward to the panel discussion and hearing from you later. So we do have an action-packed hour and a bit, and I hope you will enjoy this webinar. So as indicated on our invite, this webinar actually earns you 1.5 hours CPE training. So ensure that you attend the session, as we will be keeping a register and sending you this certificate right after the webinar. So before we begin, I want to highlight that our chat functionality is live, as well as our Q&A functionality. So please don't wait until the end to submit your question. Your participation will make sure that our webinar is valuable throughout. That being said, it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Riaz Mohammed, who will be touching on our first topic on how we audit AI. And as I've mentioned, Riaz is a director within Business Risk Services. Riaz holds a CIA qualification, is also a CISA, and a qualified external quality assurance reviewer. Riaz has a lot of passion, and you'll see this passion of IT, particularly when it comes to digital transformation. So internally, we've got a joke, and we always say we need to ask Riaz So I think perhaps we need to create a hashtag, Riaz, internally. So Riaz has discovered his passion very early in his career. And over the years, he's played a very critical role in advising our clients on how we can navigate emerging technologies, about strengthening the control environment, as well as unlocking the value of digital tools that can bring to the assurance process. So thank you, Riaz, for joining this webinar, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much, Akona, for those kind words. I'm a bit tentatively going to share my slide. It's right next door to the end event, which is bolded in yellow. So I hope I get this right. Akona, can you indicate if you can see my slides?
Yes, we can see. Thanks, Riaz.
Thanks, Akona. But really kind words from you. And I hope I can live up to expectation. Really, it's a privilege for me to be presenting at the SHEroes event, a wonderful initiative by Ria and team, on a topic that, as Akona mentioned, I am quite passionate about, all things digital, and recently AI. And the reason for that is we've obviously seen the benefit and value of AI in organizations as well as in internal audit. Now, look, I do understand that AI can be a daunting topic for internal auditors, especially as the clients we serve and organizations we serve adopt AI at a rapid pace. To be frank, nobody wants to be left out. I often sit in board meetings and committee meetings, and the committees ask management, what are we doing about AI? We don't see any AI strategy. We don't hear of AI in the organization. And that's really so organizations can stay ahead of the curve. And at the same time, organizations are looking at internal audit for increased guidance on AI. So whether as an advisor on risks and controls related to AI, or in an assurance role on processes that use and rely on AI, it's important that we as internal auditors increase our knowledge on this important subject. With that said, I don't think we should shy away from this. As internal auditors, we already possess important foundational skills that definitely set us up for success, such as critical thinking, mapping processes, assessing risks, evaluating controls, understanding organizational strategies, and the linkage to technology, and providing assurance. So taking this into account, I think we need to embrace the challenge. And we really need to see where we find our sweet spot regarding AI in the organizations that we serve. So I am a firm believer of a principle that I've held close throughout my career is that one cannot audit an area if we don't understand that area. And looking back at my career and as a junior auditor in a manufacturing environment and asked to audit production planning in a very complex environment, one of the first questions we ask ourselves, where do we start? And really we start in understanding what is going on in that process. So similarly, for AI, then let's delve into, at a high level, what is AI? So for those that don't know, the concept of AI dates back to the 1950s, believe it or not. There was a British mathematician, Alan Turing, who posed the question, can machines think? And this was in his paper, Computing Machines and Intelligence. And yes, this is the same Alan Turing that basically broke the Enigma code during World War II and turned the tide of the war to the Allies, for those World War II buffs. But basically, the Institute of Internal Audit defines AI or refers to AI as a system endowed with human-like intellectual processes, such as reasoning, learning from past experiences, discovering meaning, and generalizing. Now, all of us, in some way, shape, or form, have interacted with AI recently. And I mean, on a daily basis over the past 5-6 years, since the launch of Gen AI. But definitely we've used ChatGPT. Some of the juniors, I asked them, did you write this report using ChatGPT? And the first giveaway is the Z, right? the Z for South Africans. I think that's the first giveaway, but be it as it may, fraud detection in financial institutions, I mean, the banks that we use definitely use AI in their back-end processes. Predictive maintenance in manufacturing. I talked about manufacturing. And then I'm sure all of us would have got this feeling at some point in time using our mobile devices that it is the device listening to me. When we open up our apps that we use on a daily basis, we get these targeted ads, and it's really targeted based on discussions that we've had or searches that we've done. And really, these are fancy algorithms that's running in the background that's making these targeted ads appear on our devices. I look at AI in sort of three categories or buckets. The first one is Gen AI, which we all accustomed to, and with the advent of ChatGPT, this has become sort of mainstream. So what's Gen AI? It generates new content. It uses deep learning models trained on large data sets. And if you look at the next category, agentic AI, this has come to the fore, I would say, in the past year or so. It basically acts autonomously, defines its goal, it improves continuously. And then AI agents, something that we can all develop, basically performing tasks for users, incorporates both types, it's interactive, it's collaborative. So in essence, Gen AI is about creation and creating. Agentic AI is about autonomous decision-making and action. And AI agents, it's about interacting with the environment to achieve a set task. So whatever task we teach the AI agent to do or program the AI agent to do, it will do. And it can be both. It can be Gen AI or agentic AI in nature. And it depends on the design that we have in mind for the actual agent. So now that we've sort of unpacked the types of AI, where do we see it being used in the organizations we serve and the clients we audit? And really, this is not meant to be an exhaustive list. It's literally the tip of the iceberg. So if you look at some examples, and I'll go through it fairly quickly. Gen AI content generation and review. So yes, it's about content generation. So think about it in a client's organization. We see clients use this to develop policies, procedures, SOPs. We also see clients utilize Gen AI for reviewing of documents, whether it be legal agreements, making sure that all the clauses make sense. There's no untoward clauses or clauses that could be unfavorable to the organization. Then you look at automated reporting. Think about, our board committee packs. Think about our financial results management accounts, prepared possibly by automated reports using Gen AI. Code suggestions quite heavily used in the software development lifecycle, where developers and coders utilize AI to give them code suggestions, to review code, to develop test cases. So quite heavily used and has been used for some time. Data to insights narrative. This is quite important because AI has the ability to assess and analyze large sets of data and identify insights relating to that data and creating a narrative. So whether it's be exception monitoring, anomaly detection, things out of the ordinary, AI can do that. Workflow automation, I see this is going to be one of the key transformative initiatives with an organization. So what do we mean by workflow initiative? I actually read an article a couple of days ago, and the article was titled "When AI Takes Over Procure to Pay." And the subtitle was "It's Sooner Than You Think." And I sat back and I reflected on it, and I thought about an AI process that basically is run by an agentic AI agent where vendor master file is managed, vendor onboarding is managed, purchase orders are managed, the workflow is then managed, the receipting of goods, the three-way matching, all those nice sub-processes and controls that we used to. And the question that then was posed was, when compliance becomes embedded and performed, how do we audit that? And it's going to shift very quickly away from sampling and samples and asking for audit evidence to actually auditing the AI agent and the thinking behind the rationale of the decisions that the AI agent makes, the architecture of the AI agent, the governance of the AI agent. So internal auditors will have to quickly transform our thinking to what we used to in terms of our normal audit methodology and transforming it very quickly into an AI sort of view, and how do we audit that instead of auditing the process? Because again, compliance will be embedded, not performed. Now, incorporate that with a Sarbanes-Oxley review. And those that have been through a SOX review will know how painful it is. And one of the key components is information produced by the entity or information used in the execution of the control, completeness and accuracy. Now, if your AI agent does that for you, do you still require a management report of CNA assertions being tested? No, we're going to have to change our thinking. And as you go down the list, I mean, adaptive decision-making system. So a system that learns from itself. So learns based on criteria, learns from itself, and applies reasoning that this is why I took a specific decision or prompted a specific suggested course of action. Agentic AI does that. Again, this is really just the tip of the iceberg, but this is what we've seen in practice. And again, it's not far off. It's happening now. So I guess the key question now is auditing AI, right? How do we audit it? I think before we go into the how, it's important to take a step back. And Riyadh is going to laugh because I always say this. Let's just reflect on why do we need to audit AI. And the Institute of Internal Audit nicely gives us a couple of reasons which I would like to go through. So the first one is it's definitely an emerging risk as our organizations and clients navigate their own AI journeys and adopt AI. It's introducing risks into the organization, whether it be errors, bias, faulty algorithms. So think about that algorithm that I spoke about in the procure to pay process. If that's faulty, what's the impact? Financial, operational, reputational risks. I mean, we can see a number of risks that would emanate from faulty AI agents. Lack of transparency and explainability. I think this is key. That saying that we can always, delegate responsibility, but we can't do that for accountability. Ultimately, as the human, we retain accountability. So if an AI agent is proposing a suggested course of action, we need to understand and we need to explain, the rationale behind that course of action as a human. So that brings in an accountability leg. So regulatory and compliance, I think regulators are seeing the evolving nature of AI, how AI is being rapidly adopted, and are coming out with frameworks to manage AI ethics, AI bias. Data privacy is a big thing. Obviously, in South Africa, we have POPI, and that algorithmic accountability. Internal controls and governance, I think that's fairly easy to understand. AI systems need to align with policies, procedures, risk appetite. So in the risk management process, how is the organization taking into account the risks that AI pose? Is it within appetite? Is it above appetite? What controls are mitigating those risks? What's the residual risks, etc.? Oversight, monitoring, and ethical use of AI. And as assurance providers, we need to provide assurance that AI systems are reliable, accurate, secure, and also advise management on risk mitigation, control, gaps, and best practices. So I've said a lot. Where do we start? And for me, where do we start is asking the right questions. As internal auditors, again, in an area we may not be familiar with, what's the best course of approach? The best approach is we need to ask questions. So I've put together a couple of foundational questions, which I believe would get us started understanding the lay of the land. So the first one is, how is AI being used? So we'll obviously pose this question to management, to those charged with governance and internal control, is how is AI being used in the organization? How is it being used? Where is it being used? Is it used for content generation, for review purposes, for taking notes in meetings? Is it used during the coding process, during the software development lifecycle process? Is it replacing our procure to pay process? What exactly is AI being used in our organization? After that, the normal audit question is how has an AI strategy been established? And I think this is quite important because we often see organizations jump at using AI. We need this use case. Let's develop an AI agent. Let's deploy it. And a lot of the time it's so we can stay ahead of the curve. We don't get left behind. But if we look back and we just ask the question is, this AI journey that you've embarked on, how is it linking to your organizational strategy, and what strategy objectives is it actually supporting? So are we supporting objectives to create efficiencies, reduce costs, improve our client customer experiences? What objective are we trying to solve for here? And that's an important question for us to ask and management to reflect on. The third question is around governance. So nothing, can be done without a governance framework. I call it guidelines, a playbook, rule book, whatever you call it, whatever our organizations call it, but essentially governance, and we'll unpack the components of the governance framework in the next 1 or 2 slides. But it's important that what's the rules of engagement when it comes to AI, and this is typically found in a governance framework. And the last one is around accountability. The saying it's everybody's and nobody's. I think it's important for us to ask the question that, look, should something go wrong, who would be responsible for the risks that AI introduces, and obviously then the effects of those risks coming to fruition. Once we go through these questions, and really we can add on to this list of questions, but this should give you a good foundation in terms of where our organizations are at from an AI perspective. Now, moving on to what we do best. We do risk and controls, and I mentioned that at the beginning. As internal auditors, we know risks, we know controls. We just need to tweak our mindset in terms of what type of risks are there and what do we expect from a control set. Now, again, this is not an exhaustive list. It's a list that I've put together based on risk areas that we see are the most common. So if we start off with the entity level risks, again, lack of clear ownership, everybody but nobody's. So clear ownership, AI policies, the use of AI within the organization is governed by policies, by that playbook, by that framework. What do we expect? We expect the development and implementation of an AI governance framework based off, and organizations don't need to reinvent the wheel. NIST has come up with an AI risk management framework or ISO standards that relate to AI. One of the key risks is shadow AI, and I think all of us need to be aware of this risk. It's becoming extremely prevalent within organizations. And what is shadow AI? Shadow AI, essentially, or how I define it, is uncontrolled use of AI where organizations don't have an acceptable use policy or don't have a position around AI, have not identified an AI platform that could be used in a controlled manner. So when you don't do this as an organization and you literally keep quiet about it, you are inviting your employees to go out and use AI in an uncontrolled, unsanctioned manner. And we see this during meetings where there'll be an AI agent that's added to the meeting, and the agent takes minutes. Has the organization considered the privacy implications of having that AI agent take minutes? Where are those minutes then stored? If it's a recording, where's that recording stored? Privacy, data exfiltration. There's a number of risks that come into play when we have unsanctioned, uncontrolled AI, and that is shadow AI. So it's a major risk, and we as internal auditors need to be aware of it, and we need to be asking the right questions. Data, I would say, is one of the most important elements when it comes to AI risk. So incomplete, think about our sessions. When we audit a process that involves data, what are we looking for? We're looking for validity, accuracy, completeness. That's the same with AI. Incomplete, inaccurate, biased, out-of-date data driving wrong AI outputs. So again, back to the example of procure to pay, you got an AI agent that's gone rogue or using incorrect data, outputs are going to be so garbage in, garbage out. What do we expect? We expect data governance standards around master data management. We need processes and controls in place to ensure there's consistency of data, there's quality of data, validity of data, accuracy and completeness. And the best way for us to observe this is to understand, again, where is AI being used? If it's used within the organization in a controlled manner, we're developing our own AI agents. Remember, we're going to connect data sources to those agents. And the connection of those data sources need to be assessed for all of these assertions. Cyber risk, again, I don't think we can get away from this. Imagine an AI agent that's doing a whole host of activities in our organizations that's unsecured. Threat actors can basically manipulate that platform, that tool, that agent to reveal confidential information or utilize that to get access into our environment. So it's not that we protect everything else and we don't protect what we're creating. This obviously then poses a risk of data exfiltration. What do we expect? We expect secure coding. Like how we develop apps in the organization, we expect there's secure coding practices, there's secure APIs, there's frameworks for these things. NIST, CIS, I mean, we can go to town. And we need to then assess it against these best practice frameworks, as well as assess normal access to IT system. Who has access, who has privileged access, who can make changes, is it done in a controlled manner, etc. Privacy and regulatory compliance, again, where AI is processing personal identifiable information. It's important that we make sure that we have the proper consent, get the proper controls in place. The types of controls that we expect is for management to understand what data is flowing through these agents by doing a privacy impact assessment, by understanding the controls around the data from an encryption, at rest, and in transit perspective. Ethical risk and bias, I think I mentioned this. So transparency and explainability. The worst thing that can happen is a CFO or an FD making a decision based on an AI suggested decision or course of action, and we're unable to explain, how did we arrive at this? We can't say, no, but the AI agent, told us that this is the best course of action and that's why we did it. No, we need to be able to explain the decision that has been taken. And yes, AI does produce hallucinations. It's very confident, but incorrect outputs. So how do we protect against this? What's the controls? Use case testing is the most important for fairness, bias detection, model explainability. So explainability is, will I get to the same conclusion if performed by a human? And you basically test this during your UAT process. So the robustness of the testing processes, the completeness of the testing processes to make sure that, whatever rationale that's being applied can be explained and it makes sense. Again, the second last thing is around operational and reliability risk. So over-reliance on AI outputs without human oversight. We have a lot of, in that procure-to-pay example, we have a lot of reliance. It runs our entire process. What happens when it goes down? What happens when it gets corrupted? Do we stop operations? Hence, the normal controls, IT general controls, access management, change controls, incident management, backup, very critical. Making sure that we can recover in the event of a disaster, like we do for any other application. Third-party vendor risks. Organizations that perhaps choose to go with a third party or a vendor for an AI platform, making sure that we have the right contractual processes in place, IP ownership, data rights, security responsibilities, service uptime. We see a lot of emphasis placed on service organization reports. Service organization reports are becoming a non-negotiable in vendor arrangements, in SaaS solutions, where the onus is on the vendor to provide the report that basically shows the reader or the client that how robust their controls are as tested by an independent assurance provider. So I hope I've opened up our minds in terms of the potential risk areas and sort of expected controls in place. I will leave it there for now. And I'll leave you with this last message is I encourage you all to read the Institute of Internal Audit's AI auditing framework, as well as ISACA's IA auditing toolkit. Remember, these are guides which will need to be adapted for our organization's environment. And it's worth noting that there are certifications out there from AI fundamentals from ISACA. These not only provide us with the knowledge that we need in this evolving environment, but the level of trust and confidence in what we do. I thank you for your time. And I'll hand back to Akona. I'll invite questions. Please use the chat functionality and the Q&A functionality, and I'll respond to it as the webinar progresses. Thank you.
Right, thank you so much, Riaz, for that. You were actually frozen in time. I thought one of the agents actually got you there for a minute, the AI agents. And I mean, I'm always so inspired every time like you present. I'm learning something new like every time you present. And I mean, for me, what always like just stuck out right now was that, we always have the accountability. And some of us, we do fear like AI in terms of that is going to take over. And some of us, we want to use it to the extreme, and we forget that there's the whole governance process that we need to make sure that we take into consideration, and also asking the right questions. And that's what Riaz was saying, is that where is it being used? How is it being used? And also understanding the rules of engagement. Really, thank you for those insights, Riaz. And we look forward to actually chatting to you some more during the panel discussion. And now, let me call up our next speaker, Hema Chetty. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Hema. So Hema is an internal auditor by profession that has been in the internal audit profession as well as digital transformation field for more than 20 years. So Hema has held significant leadership roles, including being the Group Chief Operations Officer at Standard Bank Internal Audit and as a Group Chief Digital Officer for Transnet. So that was Hema's last role. And as mentioned earlier, Hema is currently the co-founder and Chief Operations Officer of Imagination Advisory and Technology, which is a fintech as well as an advisory startup. There, she's responsible for spearheading strategy and delivery of digital transformation project, as well as overseeing the organization's day-to-day operational functions. So having previously served as governor of the Johannesburg region for IIA-SA, she currently sits on the board of the IIA-SA Leadership Academy in the capacity of a non-executive director and deputy chairperson. So Hema is well respected and is viewed as an international thought leader in her field, and she has been able to successfully bridge the gap between the audit and the technology through her work. So I would have you know that Hema currently is joining us from Malaysia today, where she is currently participating in a digital conference. So that being said, Hema, welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Akona, for that warm welcome. And hi to everyone. I am in Malaysia, as Akona mentioned. It's storming here. It's 3 o'clock, 3:30 actually, in the afternoon. There is some connectivity issues, so you're not going to be able to see me, but you're going to be able to hear me loud and clear. So let me get straight into it. Thank you, Akona and the SHEroes team. It's an honor to be here today at the webinar. Like Akona mentioned, I'm Hema Chetty. I'm an auditor by profession. I've worked at Ernst & Young. I've been at Standard Bank for a long stint. You know how corporate goes. They keep you busy. By the time you look up, it's like 6, 7, 13 years. I spent a good 13 years there. But I think this is where my journey started with technology. This is where we were trying to push the boundaries as an audit firm. And we were trying to find, how do we do more with less? We all know that the work that we do is the direct relation of the number of staff that we have in our audit team, as well as the skill sets that we have. But more importantly, how do we move our function and the work that we do from reporting, from hindsight, insight, into foresight? At this point, I also got involved in the Institute of Internal Auditors. I was the governor of the Joburg region. And then I went to Transnet, as Akona mentioned, served the role as Group Chief Digital Officer, where I was responsible for putting together digital transformation strategy and roadmap. And my current role, yes, I am the partner and co-founder of Imagination Advisory and Technology. And we've built Audit, which is the world's first AI assurance platform. There are a few other solutions that we've done that meets, the business needs as well as the objectives. I'm also the vice chair of the Institute of Internal Auditors Leadership Academy. So I'm still pretty much involved in the profession. I love the profession, and we always try to enhance, enable auditors. And this is where I'm going to share a little bit more on Audrey, but also how we can use it, use AI throughout the planning process. But before I get there, I think it's important that we all understand the why. And I've prepared just 4 slides for you. And as I go along, I'll share more on my experience and some of my challenges that we find with embedding some of these challenges at this technology in Audrey. So, Kona, if you go to the next slide. So, we all know our risk landscape is changing and will continuously change. And I'm sure a lot of you in the call have really been spammed with AI over the last year. But AI is just one small element. There are a number of things that are challenging the risk landscape. If you just look at the micro as well as the macro environment and what's happening around the world, our own government, our country, our own policies, and matters that's happening in the US and how that's affecting South Africans, how the war in Russia, Ukraine is impacting our technology and how that impacts us. So basically, the landscape really is dynamic. What this also resulted in is a near knee-jerk reaction from our regulators, not knowing exactly what to do, how to do, and how this affects our country as well as our environment. We get some crazy laws that are being tabled, like the VAT increase. So regulators are on their feet. They're trying to understand the different matters as well as the technology landscape. So it really is dynamic. So what does this mean for us as auditors? It's having us to deal with the real business issues. We need to then play the role of identifying, classifying, and working with business to find a way to mitigate this. And in a perfect world, scenario for us to be more preventative than detective. So there is a demand for us to be real time. We can no longer be on the back burner. We need to be real time. We can't afford as auditors to just be the recipients of this risk. So we've got a very important role to play in providing real insights, being forward thinking, and we subjected to a lot of data. So the understanding is that we all need to use technology. Technology is the enabler. If we go to the next slide. So we're going to mitigate risk proactively before they escalate. Your audit efficiency is going to improve if we use this technology. It's going to free up the time for the auditors, and we're going to be able to focus on high value work. Decision making is going to become a lot more faster and more data driven. And you're going to build stakeholder trust because you know you're demonstrating control and oversight. So if we go to the enablers in terms of the tech world, Akona, the next slide, please. These are some of your enablers that are accelerating our journey. You probably would have all heard about this term of RPAs, robotic process engineering. But it's when we automate, this is when we automate repetitive rule-based audit procedures. And these frees up our capacity to do a lot more work. We use this in the Standard Bank context, and it was just before COVID. And we were able to test remotely the branches without going there. And we were able to get huge saving in terms of external auditors placing reliance on our work. So we really got to use the technology, and RPA is one of them. We've also got to use control monitoring tools, and this monitors our data streams and controls in near real time. And the one that I'm going to touch on and spend a little bit more time is the AI one. So we got data analytics as well as AI intelligence, artificial intelligence. We've also got the other technology enabler, which is cloud and API integration. And it's basically the layer that connects our data sources, so monitoring stays current. So for today's discussion, I'm going to focus on AI and the use of this in our audit life cycle. Akona, if you go to the next slide. So we all would have seen this. Our life cycle remains constant. We all know that we got to do field work, we got to do planning, we got to do field work execution, we got to do reporting, and we got to do follow up and continuous assurance. But what changes is how we power it. AI enhances every phase with automation, intelligence, as well as precision. So if I just share what we've done in Audrey in terms of planning. So in your annual planning process, we've enabled Audrey to be able to look at external data sources as well as internal data sources. Audrey now reads risk registers. She looks at your financial statements. She looks at your policies and she ranks these risks. So your traditional process of coming up with an audit plan is having long, lengthy discussions with your stakeholders, trying to align what are your common risk taxonomy across first line, second line, and third line. Now, when you go and speak to those stakeholders, you'd already have a pre-populated risk assessment completed for you to have strategic discussions with your stakeholder. So your discussions and the enablement of the auditor is very different. The auditors are now being able to play a more strategic role in terms of saying, I think your cyber risk inherently is rated a 4 and your control risk is a 3 for these reasons. Riaz spoke about explainable AI. In Audrey, we've got the explainability as well. So although she's using external as well as internal sources, she's telling you how she got to the rating of 3, for instance, in your control risk. And then it gives you your residual risks. And that comes up in the heat map. So it saves you time. It puts you more in a strategic position in terms of building that stakeholder relationship and trust, and freeing up. I think that's the important one, creating efficiency and freeing up your time to be able to spend it in other places um, uh, within an audit, or even putting that time to strategic audits. So that's just in planning. She also does some risk sensing and monitoring operational data. She generates the draft annual plan for you already, with complete tracking in terms of what's been added, what's been deleted, what's been deferred, what's been cancelled. So your audit committee, you're not scrambling for information, looking for what's been done and what it means in terms of risk exposure. So it really is automated using the AI capabilities. Then if I move to fieldwork and execution, and Riaz touched on agents. And we very quickly learned as well in our journey is that your AI world is changing at a very fast pace. Akona started off from stated some stats from Gartner in terms of 15% are using AI within the audits. What we found is that you can't just use it. You need to start staying ahead of the curve with the AI as well. Our journey started with agentic AI, and now we're moving to agentic AI. And how we're using it in the field work is that you're creating procurement agents, you're creating HR agents, you're creating compliance agents, and you then attaching these agents to the audit to be able to provide that coverage for you. Obviously, what you got to do is with the guardrails. Riaz also mentioned it. There's standards, IA standard. The ISACA has also published some guardrails in terms of how to use these AI agents. But this now then becomes a plug-in onto your audit, almost mimicking the behavior of an auditor and doing the decision making for you. I got quite a few questions at this conference that I was at now in Malaysia, and it was, but what does that mean for auditors and our independence and objectivity? Remember, it's not going to replace you, it's going to enhance and provide you with insights and trends and reading through data sets that you have never been able to do manually. The auditor yourselves will always be in the position to be able to apply the independence and objectivity. So what you do with that insights and those trends still lies with the auditor. So just to conclude on fieldwork and reporting, so we use predictive analytics that detects the anomalies across the entire data sets. Instead of sampling, we're using full population testing. Audit's agents help auditors detect these anomalies that, sometimes we may miss, because it's impossible to go through everything. And then AI reporting. So once everything is on your platform, it's easy for the AI to help in terms of drafting the reports using natural language, automatically summarizes the findings for you by severity as well as trend, and it delivers a visual in terms of dashboards to your audit committee. Reporting's also changed in terms of it's no longer long, lengthy, Word documents that, people and stakeholders have to scroll through. You can now produce one-pager, summarized dashboards that's easy for your audit committees, your executives to consume. So reporting now takes a couple of days, a couple of hours, opposed to weeks and months. It structures, prioritize, and drafts the reports that are aligned with your IA templates as well as, the tone that you'd like for that organization. And then the last one, AI and follow-up and continuous monitoring or continuous assurance. It automates and monitors the management actions and continuously controls the tests via data integrations. So follow-up becomes a lot more proactive. Audrey continuously tests these key controls, issues real-time alerts when exceptions occur. So we are quickly moving away from point-in-time assurance to real-time, to more continuous with AI, with the technology that we have at our disposal. So just in conclusion, I just want to share that, AI is your friend. It turns us auditors into data interpreters. It has insights that replaces some of these checklists that we use. And it really does provide real-time assurance, which supports our strategic decisions. So the future of audit is intelligent, it's agile, and most importantly, it's value-driven. My urge to all of you on the call is that don't think that it's still coming, it's here. Embrace the change, embrace AI, and start small. Start using it as use cases, start playing around with it. The person not using it is at risk. So my urge to you is please explore. Don't be scared of the technology or the AI. It's there to support you. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Hema, for that insightful presentation. Sure. I was like really, really blown away in terms of like what you have done with the organization through Audrey. And I noticed that Audrey is a she, which is very, very good given where we are at this particular point in time. I suppose, all she's, they know how to send agents very, very nicely. So I think, what really, really stood out for me in terms of like your presentation is really about then, AI, us being able to use it strategically. And it helps to free up our time so that we can be able to think and to focus on the things that really, really matter. More often than not, our stakeholders are looking, for those insights. They're actually calling us to be more strategic. And what better way to be able to demonstrate, our thinking. So now let's get into it. Thank you so much. Let's get into it now in terms of then our panel discussion. So we'll be joined by all of our speakers, and if our speakers can please come on screen. And we are joined by Ria, who's no stranger to us. And as I've been mentioned, Ria actually leads the SHEroes movement. So we've got our own movement in as much as the Women for Change also has a movement. We have a movement as well. So in terms of Ria, so Ria, I can't say anything about you, right? You know this, right? So Ria breaks all the stereotypes of being a boring auditor. So she's not boring at all. She absolutely loves technology. And every time, I'm with her and we are on clients, I mean, her passion for technology, she exudes, that passion. She's always like so excited about the new tools. And together with Riaz, I mean, you should see both of them in a meeting. Like when we're in a meeting, I tell you, yo, even the client gets excited. And Ria has over 30 years experience. I mean, she discovered her passion, qualified as a CA, but she didn't want to be a boring CA. That's why she actually moved over to the technology world. So she's seen us move from spreadsheets that couldn't even handle pivot tables and to today's AI-driven tools that can actually analyze huge data sets. And I mean, you would have seen that is actually the trend in terms of like the conversation or what Riaz has mentioned, as well as what Hema has mentioned. And instead of like resisting the change and keeping those spreadsheets, Ria has really embraced this innovation with curiosity as well as enthusiasm and a sense of humor. And hopefully you'll get to see that sense of humor. And she really makes it fun. I mean, I think all of this should be fun, right? And she is proof that, as internal auditors, we can be dynamic, we can be forward-looking, and we can be cool. And thank you so much for joining us, Ria. So do we have our presenter? So we'll kickstart then this session with the first question, and that will go out to you, Ria, in terms of then, so artificial intelligence is transforming the way business function across all areas are doing their work. So what does this transformation look like for internal audit? And then in your response, Ria, if you can please then cover, how AI is changing the way the audit teams plan as well as deliver the value, and perhaps you can also cover, the opportunities that it presents in our profession right now. Thank you.
Wow, Akona, after that introduction, you're definitely setting the bar high. Good morning, everybody. Yes, I love toys. What can I say? Life is too boring without using all the new technology and all the new things that we have. So for me, AI or artificial intelligence is actually the superpower for internal auditors. It's making all of us heroes and SHEroes. So thank you to my hero, Riaz, for sharing today with us all your learnings and so forth. But to get to the point, Akona, for me, this is such an exciting time to be an internal auditor. And I know I said this before at one of the SHEroes functions, but it's just how technology keeps on shaping what we do, influencing what we do, as well as making us more efficient. So for me, there's really two things to take into account. On the one hand side, it is what we need to audit. And if we're looking at planning, what we need to audit going forward. And the second one is how do we as internal auditors adopt and utilize artificial intelligence. So let me talk about the first one. So what we audit. Artificial intelligence is definitely on everybody that I talk to's agendas. So organizations is adopting it formally or not formally, which is then giving rise to the shadow AI challenge that Riaz alluded to. And it is then important for internal auditors to start asking and auditing the governance around artificial intelligence, the use of it. Certain organizations is far mature on this journey already, has already embedded it in some of the processes, particularly if you start thinking of some of the banks, credit ratings, etc. So obviously in that case, the governance of AI need to be on your internal audit plan. But then also when you are auditing specific processes on your audit plan or specific audits, it is important that when one then look at how you differently audit that and take the artificial intelligence risks associated with that, the privacy, the data flows, the biasness that potentially one of these robots could actually come with a wrong conclusion. So the skepticism that we as auditors have, we have to keep. And we certainly need to then audit those specific automated agents. The second one is, how do we use AI as our superpower? The obvious one, which I'm sure all of us are using already, is for research purposes. So no excuses anymore for us to get to a client meeting or meeting our auditees unprepared. Because AI, ChatGPT, Copilot, it all gives us the benefit of being really well prepared for sessions, really well prepared for discussions, ask the relevant questions, and actually really know the topic that we are going to discuss. So that's the first one, which is an obvious one. Secondly, it is then how what Hema also touched on is through the entire life cycle of our typical audit, is where we do it for risk assessments. We can even start processing volumes of transactions. The most important part for me that colleagues need to remember is that our ethics, our critical thinking, and skepticism needs to stay with us. It does not mean you can trust AI and just trust the answers you will get. We have to keep skeptical and remember our ethics when we are actually testing these things. And remember the objectives of the tests. I do see a pertinent switch in how do we evaluate risks. So auditing a simple procurement process, it is really thinking deeper on what are those particular procurement risks, because how could AI actually create new risks that we need to think about and then audit for or looking for control. Yeah, I'm very excited. It's yeah, I love to see where this is going, and yeah, AI is in my mind, it's my superpower.
Oh, no, definitely, Ria. And I liked it when you talk about like critical thinking. And we were in the previous arc, you would recall, for one of our clients, where they were saying is that people are actually even taking their inputs, right? And I just want to go to the point about critical thinking, and they just giving it, to the client without actually applying their mind. So I think like that is like the danger that we always need to make sure, because I know we are always rushed, especially like in the consulting space, right, where we've got limited hours, and then we want to just quickly, hoy, in Riaz's language, hoy this thing to the client, right? But however, we shouldn't actually ever forget about, critical thinking. And thank you for highlighting that. So you touched on about Ria introducing risk, and I want to just bring it to maybe Ria's like this next question about like these new risks that we are seeing, right? I mean, we talked about data privacy like concerns, etc. So how can we then, Ria's like use this to stay ahead of this risk, right? And to provide assurance on how AI is being used responsibly, because all along, I think, the theme is that we need to use it like responsibly. So yeah.
Yeah, I think, thanks, Akona. So I guess everybody can gauge from the discussion, there's sort of two elements to this, right? One is using AI as an enabler for internal audit, and then auditing AI as a risk area. So I think let's start with auditing AI as a risk area. So if you look at the risks that I've gone through, we've talked about the data risk, the quality of the data, model bias, Ria touched on it, cybersecurity. All of these risks, we obviously need controls in place, or management needs to implement controls, and that starts off with governance frameworks, those guardrails that I spoke about previously, and that's really to set up the rules of engagement, ensure that the risks are identified proactively, and then obviously ensuring that we have sufficient controls to mitigate that risk. And that's sort of on management. Where do we see ourselves using AI? And obviously, Hema spoke about a couple of use cases. I think for me, the challenge that I've given the team here internally at SNG is I find ourselves spending a lot of time during the discovery phase of the engagement, or the planning phase of the engagement, where we sit with an auditee, we understand the process. After we understand the process, typically, if the methodology requires we document the narrative, then we document the risk and control matrix. All of us can follow that, that sort of life cycle. And then we develop audit procedures and then we test. The challenge to the team was, listen, guys, I mean, you have the discussion. We develop our AI agent within our environment, so in a controlled manner. So I think that's the first thing that I want to mention, in a controlled manner. Remember, we're dealing with sensitive data. We're dealing with potentially clients' IP. So making sure that the agents that we develop are sitting in our environment, and responsibly handling data. So I got a question on the chat around data exfiltration beyond our borders. Once it goes beyond our borders, it's subject to foreign legislation and regulation. We need to ensure that it needs to sit within our jurisdiction, and we then need to see the data flow. So getting back to how do we see this play out? AI agents transcribing process, understanding discussions, transcribing that into a narrative, converting that into a risk and control matrix, developing audit procedures, and actually executing the audit on data that we feed it. If you tell me if we can do that, and that's the AI agent and use case that we're working on, cut the 200-hour or 400-hour audit into 50 hours. But the question I'll mention here is around data. The right data. We spoke about valid, accurate, complete data. But again, the key point is around the maturity of our clients and organizations' control environment. There's a direct correlation between how mature the control environment is and how much we can deploy and use AI in our audit lifecycle. The more mature it is, the more we can. And the less mature it is, the less we can. And I always use the example, and Ria knows this example very well. If our organizations are paying payroll via a pay slip, a written pay slip and a check, or a direct EFT, I mean, how much of technology can we use in that manual control environment? So the push here is for us to work with organizations. And we need to use this as a catalyst to begin these discussions, that clients, the more you improve your processes, the more you implement technology, the more we as an internal audit can pivot. We can start deploying technology to increase efficiencies, to increase coverage, to give better results, better insights. And it's a journey we should work with our organizations. We need to be that catalyst. We need to transform. And we're uniquely positioned to do that. So I hope everybody takes that as a challenge.
Thank you so much for that. And whilst we're talking about, whilst we're talking, I mean, I couldn't help but to think, Yossi, we need to just be quick, man. So this then maybe I will bring Hema into the discussion. How easy is this? I mean, you've deployed Audrey. So what are the quick wins? That's what perhaps you can maybe give us advice on from what you've seen with the implementation of Audrey.
Thanks, Agona. So I think there are few challenges in implementing AI. And I mean, one of them, Riaz, and I think Riaz also touched on, is data and data quality. AI is only as strong as the data behind it. We often say that, we can't start because the organization doesn't have a data strategy, or we can't rely on the completeness and accuracy of data. But as auditors, we must remember that we need to be part of some of those solutions. And what we can do from our side to help them is start doing some advisory work, putting a data strategy, but start putting some dashboards and use these dashboards for continuous monitoring to show up the bad data. Make that visible, and you can see how that will change in turn. And that's how we can start leveraging off then the data to use it in AI. So that's just one of the challenges. The other one I find is the fear and resistance of change. Getting people on the journey, getting them to understand why we need to use it. It's not there to replace us. People are often scared that, AI and technology is going to replace us and take away our jobs. But it's getting everybody on this journey and understanding the why, and then being deliberate about it. So I often get pushback in organizations that, we just don't have time to do something different because we need to land our audit plan. We've got so many audits, I can't take people out. The risk of not using technology is far greater than just doing everything as we comfortable and used to doing. We're going to fall short in the long term. So we got to spend some time on change management and getting people understanding why we need to change. The other one is, a lack of clarity of use cases. Where do we start? We know we want to do something different, but where do I start? Do I get a vendor to help me? Do we deploy? Do we get IT? Do we go to our counterparts and ask them for assistance? So there's lack of clarity on some of the use cases. And then you get the usual budget constraints and skills gap. We need staff that are data literate and understand analytics. So my recommendation for some of the quick wins, I tell everybody just start, but select one or two high value use cases. Whether it's in a procurement space, whether it's payroll, whether it's fraud, and start using that just for some continuous monitoring. Then start using that, to do AI generated risk heat maps. But start small, run your proof of concept, show the value, show the impact, and that's going to unlock then some doors in terms of, even budget and budget constraints. When people can see the value you're adding, they also need to be taken onto the journey as to why they need to invest in some of this technology. Yeah, thanks, Kona.
I saw Ria and you nodding. Maybe I can just bring you in over here. And you've had interesting conversations in Cape Town over the last week or two around this, like exactly. Maybe let me just bring you in on the conversation to comment about this in particular, when we are talking about that value that internal audit brings and the budgeting aspects of it.
Yeah, Kona, you remind me. I was talking to a CAE and I was inviting him to the session, and he said to me, why should I join the session? Because actually, whatever I want to know about AI, I can get on AI. So I just ask AI the questions and I get what I needed. And I must say, it wasn't the response I thought I would get, which really tested my sharp thinking. But he made an extremely valuable point, and we were then just chatting around, how AI has already changed the way we work and so forth. But the end result of that conversation was actually where we said that as auditors, the true value that we will still bring to this is our skeptical minds, our analytical, critical thinking, and really thinking what the risks are. Because AI will do a risk assessment based on information it gets from all over that is in the public domain and with large organizations, their own knowledge databases that gets trawled and used for that risk assessment. But actually looking at a process and applying your mind to what are the true risks, that only a human can do. And that really resonated with me. And sure, it made me feel better. At least there will still be a job for me. But it also made me excited because, and that's where I came up with this phrase for myself to say that AI is my superpower. Because it's really how we can then utilize this tools, technology to our advantage for doing things quicker, faster, broader, getting broader insights into what's happening. And being an internal auditor, we have the opportunity where we actually look at organizations in totality, right? We're not in a silo, only in a procurement department or so forth. And we can actually connect the dots across an organization. I mean, again, we touched on procurement, but this is where one can bring together the risks around procurement, couple it with potential risks in a recruitment process, coupled with high turnover of staff, controls around users and leavers, etc. And that then gives you a very different risk landscape. And that is where the true value that we as internal auditors can bring. the point that Hema made on data really resonated with me. And in my young and innocent days, I did quite a lot of work in data quality and data governance, and some of the people on the call will remember that. And if data is not well governed, well structured, and accurately assimilated, AI could really lead you down the wrong path. And that is why the points Ria's made around testing your AI tools and agents is so important. Before you actually start utilizing that, and before you're actually relying on the output of that. Because if it is based on flawed data or incomplete data, it can really lead to disastrous decision making. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that response. And I also really liked that proof of concept, starting small, what Hema actually mentioned as well. And procurement, like for me, is one of those processes that land themselves so nicely because it's data rich. And I think as auditors, I mean, it's a process that we should be understanding like really, really well as well. So Hema, I don't know if you wanted to add to that. So your mic was off.
Yeah, no, something that Ria said just came to mind. I think she spoke about, yeah, it was the data component, but also the client asking her, she could use ChatGPT. And I think this is something where, everyone needs to understand that when you start using some of this open source and attaching company information that may be confidential, you actually start making that information public. So if you're running confidential, that now other ChatGPT engines can use, and that now becomes public. So we really do have to be responsible of how we use some of these AI, tools that are out there. I mean, you'd rather have something that's internal and you train your own LLM than training another LLM. So yeah, just something that I wanted to share. Thanks.
Very important, Emma. Very, very important.
Very important. So let's then talk about then these hallucinations, and perhaps maybe Hema also you can touch on this like from a practical point of view. I mean, they introduce risks, and I'll look to you, Riaz, like for this response. So how can then organization guard themselves against these hallucination risks to ensure that the insights that we bring forward they're really valid insights? And perhaps after then your response, if Hema can then just maybe bring in the practical spin to that. Thanks.
Yeah, so Akona, I look at it from both the client perspective and us as internal audit using AI. And I think we can't divorce ourselves from governance, from validation, and responsibly using AI. So in the context of governance, for me, it's using the approved tools in our secure environment. Secondly, ensuring that the data we feed into AI agents is valid, accurate, complete. Otherwise, I mean, we're setting ourselves up for failure. And Ria mentioned it. And I think we can't get away from training and upskilling ourselves. We often raise findings against our clients that, listen, there's a lack of a training plan and training not aligned to organizational needs. We're quick to judge, but I think we need to look at ourselves internally and say, listen, when last did I go on a training course around AI? We've been hearing around, and I mean, this is one of the initiatives, but really formal training to understand AI and start playing around, as Emma mentioned, with AI agents in a responsible manner. And we also need to understand where it's risky. Producing an audit report, I think you mentioned it, and sending it to the client that's produced directly from AI and sending it, I mean, that's just going to land you up in hot water. So we need to understand the risks, maintain our professional skepticism, and take accountability. I think those things will stand us in good stead in our AI journey and making sure that we get the benefit of it. There was an article that was written in India where the person that wrote the article copied the entire response from AI, even that last prompt to say, would you like me to summarize this for you? I mean, that's just, that's just an example of how we could use it irresponsibly. And I guess all of us don't want to do that.
No, definitely. Would you like, that's really funny. Yeah.
Akona, that my first experience with ChatGPT was I think when it came out probably first, I couldn't resist because I needed to try and figure out this. And as a lot of you that know me will know, I'm not the best cook. So I definitely not profess that I'm a chef. So I wanted new ideas for dinner and a recipe. And I thought, well, I'm going to see, how can I, make interesting dinner? And that was how I started. I literally asked for recipe ideas. And I tried one recipe and it was a success. So, you need to try it and try it in a safe way where you don't expose other data and other sources. So, yeah.
No, definitely. And Hema?
Yeah, so I was just going to add that, as auditors as well, we need to have some controls and we need to do some validation. So use verified data sources. Like you're not going to use people's Twitter handles where you know that's their views and opinions. So make sure that you authenticate some of it, and that's why the explainable is so important for the AI when you're using it. But also audit the AI, validate the logic, look at the thresholds. Does it make sense? What are some of the training data sets that are used that it's coming up with some of these conclusions? And then one other one is have some sort of AI control framework. Something that speaks about how it needs to be documented, how it's tested, and how you're proving. Riaz mentioned sources that are there available by the ISACA as well as the IAA. There's also some white papers that are floating around. Use some of that to come up with your own audit AI control framework. Yeah, thanks.
Some very useful advice. I mean, we're getting free advice over here. And I hope we are all taking notes because you're taking notes. So, Riaz, you touched on training, and maybe perhaps Hema, whilst you had the mic, let's talk about the skills, right? That we need to have. Yes, we need to be trained. The skills and competencies. So, what have you seen in terms of some of the training initiatives that have been in place that audit functions can use to reskill and upskill? And I'm looking to you in particular because at some point, I mean, you were cool for Standard Bank as well, for you to just maybe provide us with a response to that question.
No, thanks, Akona. And I think, I mean, we all know data has been a commodity for the longest time. As auditors, we all need to understand the basics of data and being data literate. And that can then turn into different career paths based on auditors' interest in training. But you could have some foundational data literacy where it's like a compliance training. Every single auditor needs to have some data literacy. And then based on their advancement, if they want to go into data science, data analytics, machine learning, AI, you can have different career paths within the audit department where maybe a compliance auditor is not keen on being a data specialist or a data scientist, but have some career paths within audit to keep your auditors engaged, to keep them wanting to stay with you as well within the organization. So data literacy, I'll say AI literacy because there's so much that we can use as the audit fraternity. Everybody doesn't need to be AI specialists, but identify people in your team that want that speciality and invest in them. Agile thinking, rapid adaptation to emerging risks. I think that's a common one. The other big one is storytelling with data. Being able to understand the what and the why and be able to take your auditee on the journey, be able to tell the story of the trends that you're seeing. And I think the last one is more ethical reasoning and judgment. And I think that's critical for your AI governance. So I would suggest, upskill teams do formal training on data analytics, as well as AI auditing. Um, Use some of the AI tools so they get some of the practical experience, but also encourage certification. Encourage teams to get CIA, to get some certifications. And then, yeah, as part of the training was, run those POCs, run pilot projects. The best way to learn is not in the classroom, but actually being challenged with practical, examples and challenges that they're trying to solve for. So, yeah, and I'd like to say humans will always understand AI and will also outperform AI. So, we need to invest in training. There's a bigger cost of not training someone, than saying we don't have budget to train. Yeah.
Certainly, Hema. No, certainly. Riaz, did you want to
Yeah,
have input?
I just wanted to piggyback on what Emma said. Look, I think it's about initiative. Kona, it's about individuals taking the initiative. Look, I think yes, there's definitely perhaps as you get into more detailed or building detailed AI agents, you would need more experience and knowledge. But if you're starting small, as Emma mentioned, with a pilot, with a proof of concept. I would recommend individuals starting with something simple like Copilot Studio. Low code, no code. You don't need to have a lot of coding experience. You need to understand data. You need to have critical thinking, which we all should have. As internal auditors. I think start off with Copilot Studio and start building your own AI agent as a proof of concept. Try 1 or 2 use cases, as Helma mentioned. Identify a problem that you're solving for and build it. You test, you build it, you test the agent, you validate the agent, and you monitor and refine. And I think the key thing is it's not an overnight journey. So I don't think you're going to get the answer immediately. I think it's an iterative process where one will need to constantly refine, monitor, refine, and then obviously embed. So the challenge really is let's start. Copilot is there, although it's the full license. It's the full license, not the free version, but I guess we can negotiate 1 or 2 licenses. I'm sure we can do that.
Can I just add to that, Riaz? The other thing that we've seen is where teams start doing this together. Because it's natural for some people to be a bit more reserved in trying new things, and other people a bit more risk takers. But the moment you have a small team that try these things together and encourage each other and show each other, look what I've done, there's certainly it snowballs, and that's for me so exciting to see how these things snowball and the excitement when we get some of these things right. But it starts somewhere and pilot, right?
No, definitely. No, definitely. And I like this, when Hema said storytelling, right?
Yes.
We need to get better, at telling a story. I resonate so much with that, and that's what excites me. So we are out of time. So I will give the speakers, because we don't have any more questions on the chat. So I'll give maybe the speakers, if you've got any closing remarks, perhaps starting with yourself, Riaz. Are there any closing remarks?
Sure. So much was said. Now to sort of crystallize it in a closing remarks. I think for me, as internal audit, our mandate is clear. We shouldn't forget that. That's the first thing. The second thing is we shouldn't shy away, and I hope everybody got that message quite clearly. Don't shy away from AI. And let's take on the challenge. And I challenge and encourage you all to consider AI in IA from today onwards. Thanks.
Oh, definitely. That's another hashtag. Ask Riaz says AI in IA. Hema, closing remarks.
Yeah, I think I've said it quite a few times now, but we got to start somewhere, start small, And once you start getting traction, you can scale. But I think the success, we must always remember, it will come from the people, doing it collaboratively, the processes that we use, and then the technology. Everything has to work together. And I think importantly is if we embrace this change as an opportunity and not see it as a threat. Um, I think that would be my message to the people on the call. Thank you.
Ria?
Sure. For me, it is AI is one of the tools in our toolbox to be future fit and relevant internal auditors. As internal auditors, we've got a responsibility to help protect and grow the organizations that we work for. And AI is that superpower that can help us to do better, add more value, and stay relevant. Yeah. So last but not least, then maybe Akona, I think we're closing up. I just want to use the opportunity to thank all the loyal supporters of SHEroes and to say, please continue following us on LinkedIn. And there is interesting developments in the new year. So please look out for that. And some more technical discussions and debates and thought leadership coming from the forum next year. And just want to wish everybody an amazing end of the year and wish you safe and health and prosperity. Thanks, Akona, and thanks, colleagues.
All right, thank you so much for that, and to all of you, our amazing speakers. I mean, it was not a lie. I certainly learned so much, and for sharing your experiences so openly with us. Your contributions have really enriched all of us. And to the attendees, our loyal supporters as well, a big thank you. I wish I could name you all by name. So I just went through the list and I saw yes, yes, yes. So your involvement really what makes this meaningful for us. And a special thanks, all of this would have not been possible without our SHEroes. And I want to really mention them by name, Mbali, Simona, Lungile, Nomvuyo, and Kolwani, that are working very hard behind the scenes, the coordination, making sure that we are paying attention to the detail. And as Ria has mentioned, please follow us on LinkedIn. Our details will be on screen on our SHEroes page. We also have an email address, that's sheroes@sng.gt.com. We've also included Hema's details, which is hema@imagination.com. And we're always happy to support you and guide you, as well as to collaborate with you as you go through your AI and digital journey. So with that, thank you once again. We hope that this session was insightful. Happy Friday and goodbye, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.